still, for some reason, trying to route that back to the '03 server, even though the mailbox is on the 2010 server. Now, strangely enough, I can go into the account properties. Let's just say it's Mary. Okay, they can't email Mary. If I go into the account properties and create a new address like Mary R, they can email Mary R, but they can't email Mary. But it's the same mailbox. So that tells me that it knows who Mary R is, and it knows that that address is valid from internally, which means Outlook address book seems to be working fine because they can just type Mary R and it resolves that.
Right.
But it won't resolve Mary, which is strange. I did find sometimes if you use Outlook 2010, do you use Outlook 2010?
No.
Okay, so when you use Outlook 2010, especially in an Exchange environment, when you open up Outlook 2010, it's going to want to auto complete like your username. It's going to want to set your account for you.
Okay.
Now, when it does this, if you let it set it up automatically, even though you're inside the office, it's going to set up the Outlook Anywhere settings, which is to check HTTPS : and your external mail account server name. It wants to check that by default. And if you uncheck it and close Outlook and open it back up again, it's going to be checked again. That's if you use the autocomplete mail setup in Outlook 2010. If you open up Outlook 2010 and say, no, I'm going to configure this manually, and you type in the server name and the user's name and hit check name and it underlines it, then it won't check itself. But if you use autocomplete, that will be checked every time. And that may cause problems for some people. I don't know if that's causing a problem, but between that and putting it in and taking it out of cached mode, some users were able to send mail to Mary without a problem. Some weren't. So it's not very consistent of what's going on, but that's the last thing I have left to do with this migration is to figure out why those 4 mailboxes cannot get mail from some internal people, because it's not everybody. Because when I tested, more than half that I tested, or I'm sorry, more than 80% that I tested could send mail to the person fine, but a couple are telling me I can't send mail to him. And when I go try it, sure enough, and if you can't send mail to one of them, you can't send mail to any of those 4 that failed initially. So that's a little strange.
Very strange.
Yeah, it's strange. So I had that issue. That's the only issue we have left. Other than that, we apart from having to do some searching with IPv6 and the commands to type into the PowerShell after we migrated the SSL. Remember, that was even though the certificate was there, no services were using it. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
So just because you imported it, Exchange, that's fine, it's there, but all my services are using the mail, the internal server's name .local, the self-signed one. So you got to run some commands to say, no, don't use that, use this one. And once it uses that one, it's going to be fine. So here's what I think, and the article is a good article, but here's the key things to remember that aren't in the article. Exchange 2010 works differently than Exchange 03. So if you have any network scanners, network copiers, you have to create connectors, receive connectors for those. And that means that server can receive mail from those devices. This user had a fax. I wasn't even aware of this. They had a fax machine that routed faxes to email. We didn't put that in. I didn't even know about it. But they called and told me they can't get faxes after this migration. I said, well, faxes? What do you mean faxes? I mean, I don't know anything about a fax machine isn't affected by what we did. It's the phone that, prints the faxes. And she explained, no, we get this in email. So after digging around, we realized, okay, they put this in, and whoever did this just put the IP of the SBS server, and that worked because that's how Exchange 03 works. It's easy, but there's no security in it.
Gotcha.
So any devices, not only does DNS have to be changed, but these connectors need to be created. Watch out for IPv6 if you're having issues. That's probably what it is. Um, and oh, we had a big problem with printers. Now, I told him before, all these printers that are shared on the server are going to be gone. So if people are using those, they need to delete them and just recreate them. Well, I know it's easy for me and you to delete a printer and reinstall it.
Right.
It's not easy for users apparently.
It's quite challenging.
So we had to fix a lot of printers. Um, and there were some issues because at first the people on site said, no, we can do that. So I gave them instructions. I said, the only printers you need to delete is if it says printer on and then the old server name.
Right.
If it says anything else, don't delete it. Because a lot of them print to the IP address of the printer because they have these big office jets that have multifunction devices. I don't install those on the server. I don't want that software on the server.
Right. So you just create a standard TCP/IP port.
Yep. Or actually, they'll use that software to install on their local machine. And when it asks for a wired connection, they say wired connection, find it, here it is, go.
Gotcha.
So, and a lot of them aren't on the server. So we had a problem with them deleting the wrong printers. They would delete IP printers, not the ones that we told them to. So that was a big mess, unfortunately, because they thought they could follow directions, but they couldn't. So we had to go out there and figure that out. Oh, there was just something else that was a problem I thought of, and it was on the tip of my tongue. Oh, I remember. After the domain controller was demoted, we started getting calls from some people that said their computers are running very, very slow. And when I hear very, very slow,
I think about DNS. You
think about DNS.
Mm-hmm.
Think about DNS, and I think about orphaned entries, like a drive letter that doesn't exist anymore.
Yes, and I agree. And you can verify that by going to the command prompt, type in net space use, and you'll see disconnect.
Yes. So the first thing I did was check DNS. Okay, yeah. I said they're pulling an IP, they're pulling the right DNS. So it's not that. What I found was one of the things I did on the small business server, like 2 weeks before we did this migration, was I went through and unchecked my document redirection.
That's right. I do remember you saying that.
Because I don't want things redirected to the HTTP the old domain controller, because it's going to go away. So unfortunately, it didn't work for everybody. When I connected it to a user, I looked around, and one of the things I saw was my document path was still pointing to the old server. Now, here's the thing. It was the UNC path, not the drive letter. If it was a drive letter, it would have worked fine because the drive letters all stay the same. Some users had the UNC path. Now, the XP users, we could easily change it. We had some Windows 7 users, the way that works with libraries and that kind of thing, it would not let us change the path of My Documents. You couldn't set it back to default. You couldn't do anything with it. Now, this is what my guy told me. I wasn't out there seeing that. When I did remotely to check on one, she happened to have XP. I changed the path and everything worked fine. But when he went out to go to the other ones, so the one that had Windows 7, he said he could not change the path. Now, I'm not sure if it could have been done to the registry or if it could have been changed somehow, but one of the benefits of working in businesses and not home users is that it's easy to change your profile. Profiles don't mean that much in the business world because there's not that many customizations. They have their programs to run, they have their email, they have their printers. It's not a big deal to blow away a profile usually for a business user.
Except if they have Windows 7, it's a little bit different process than XP.
Yeah. So he told me there was a handful of those. He told me he did new profiles and was able to set the My Document path correctly, and they all started working fine. So
good.
The My Document path, look out for that as well. I mean, redirection or unchecking the redirection should have put people back to their defaults, and it did for quite a few people, or most people, because only had a handful that had a problem. Um, and it might be nice if you're gonna, if even if you're not using redirection, if you just can say, move my documents to this path, stick with the drive letter,
Mhm.
because that would have caused us a lot less problems if drive letters would have been used here and not UNC paths, because it would have been seamless. They wouldn't have had a problem.
Right, and I've been part of some of the migrations where that was one of the key problems that people manually mapped drives with UNC paths, and then they go amok, and then you find out, oh, it's pointing to the old server.
Yeah, never, never. See, at one point, there's an argument. Some people say, well, I like to use UNC path because if for some reason the drives don't get mapped, they can still access their resources. You know, if I don't have a P drive, but I can still go to slash whatever, that's better. Well, not really. It may be better once in a while, but if you're not mapping the P drive, you need to figure out why not mapping the P drive.
Right.
Don't rely on the UNC path to hide errors in drive mappings.
Yeah, because that's just a band-aid.
Right, and it's going to cause problems like this, to where when you want to change a server, you've got to go look and see who has a UNC path and who doesn't. Or just change it, and whoever calls most likely has a UNC path and not the drive letter.
Yeah.
So it actually went pretty smoothly for my first kind of migration like this. If I do it again, I'll know some different things to check on. And it'll be quicker. I won't do as much Googling to figure out what was going on, but we still came in quite a bit under our quoted hours.
We're good. Was it just a one-man show, or did you have help?
I did most of it myself. The only thing I had help with was early on we had to actually reinstall some client workstation or some they run a lot of different line of business applications. So when we moved those to the new servers, it required making a change for each workstation to see the new server. So we went in on like a Saturday, and 3 of us knocked out 70 computers in a couple of hours. Just making these changes real quick.
Oh, I got you. So you did not install 70 workstations. You just logged in and made modifications to each.
Yeah, we just had to log in each one and make a change on each one, really quick. I mean, each one took a minute. We had a little tool we had to run that the company gave us. We ran that, and that was it. So I had some help with that part, but that portion. I mean, I moved the servers, but we all went in together to do the touch each workstation. And I had a guy go out to move some other stuff that needed to be done physically as well. So apart from that, now I did have him out there the past 2 days putting out little fires here and there.
Right,
Not
which
all,
are
not all
expected.
related to the migration. Some are just day-to-day stuff. So apart from that, I did it all myself.
Okay, no, I mean, and the small fires are gonna happen, and there's gonna be Bob who says he can't do function A anymore and has to do with the new server. I'm like, no, I don't cause paint to go down, sir. But
Yeah. And if you're doing a migration like this, I mean, it's a 70 user, it's a large company. They have like 7 or 8 buildings, and they've got way more than 70 employees. That's how many computers they have.
right.
Don't try and sugarcoat it. I mean, tell them, look, this is a major deal. I mean, we're going from 1 service to 4 servers.
Mhm.
This is a major deal. There's going to be issues. So let's not have the illusion that you're not going to have any hiccups, or there's not going to be any migration issues. Just expect them. They're going to happen. Things pop up. So,
Yep, and the only
be
thing,
upfront. Yeah,
right,
tell them you're going to have issues.
and on the flip side, also tell them whatever issues you have, I'll be here for you, and we'll take care of it. Because that's what they want to hear. You know, for the recent Windows 7 migration that I was a part of, where we did 4,000 workstations, and people were really worried. We ran into issues, but it wasn't anything that we didn't know the answer to. Okay, reinstall this, apply this patch, and that's it. Oh, okay, well, I'm up and running. Yep, all over a cup of coffee.
Right. And it's important in this instance. I know we talked about a central point of contact before, to have that central point of contact, because you say, look, issues are going to pop up, but we need those filtered, because I can't have 70 people calling my office reporting the same issue.
I agree.
So we're going to have issues. We're going to address every one of them. We're going to make sure everything's working correctly as soon as we can. but we need make sure your users